Today, we're diving into a story that so many of us know and love, The Little Prince. But here's the thing about this book. You might think it's a children's story, but it's really a profound guide to what actually matters in life. And honestly, its biggest secrets are the kind you only really get when you're a little older. So, let's jump in. Okay, so the entire philosophy of the book is laid out for us right in the very first chapter. It all comes down to a simple drawing, a little test of perception that really sets the stage for everything that follows. So, our narrator, when he was just 6 years old, was reading a book about the jungle, and he gets this idea. He sits down and creates what he calls his drawing number 1.
He was super proud of it. He took his masterpiece to the grown-ups and asked them, "Does this drawing frighten you?" So take a look. What do you see? I mean, it's a hat, right?
Well, that's exactly what every single grown-up said. Frightened? Why would anyone be frightened by a hat? But of course, that's not what it was at all. It was a boa constrictor digesting an elephant. The narrator even drew the inside for them, but they just kind of patted him on the head and told him to go study things like geography and grammar instead.
And right there, that's it. That's the central theme of the entire book. You've got this clash between two completely different ways of seeing the world. On one hand, you have the literal, unimaginative view of the grown-ups, and on the other, the insightful, imaginative view of a child. This drawing number 1 basically becomes his secret test for every person he meets. Okay, so fast forward. The narrator is now a pilot, and his plane has crashed right in the middle of the Sahara Desert. We're talking 1,000 miles from anything. And it's out there, in the middle of nowhere, that he meets someone who will change his life forever. He's woken up by this funny little voice, and there's this remarkable small person standing there who looks at him very seriously and says, "Please, draw me a sheep." Now, the narrator, remembering he gave up drawing, decides to try out his one and only masterpiece, the boa constrictor. And you know what? The little prince sees it immediately. No, he says, "I don't want an elephant inside a boa constrictor." Just like that, he passed the test. So the narrator tries his best to draw a sheep. But the little prince, well, he's not easily impressed. He sees things with this amazing clarity, and he keeps rejecting the drawings. This one's too sick, that one's a ram, this one's too old. Nothing is quite right. So finally, the narrator's just running out of patience. So he just draws a crate, a simple box. And he tells the prince, "The sheep you want is inside." And this, right here, is the breakthrough moment. He's finally speaking the language of imagination. And what happens? The little prince's face just lights up. He can see the sheep perfectly. He completely understands that what's essential can be invisible. And in that moment, the two of them really, truly connect. Now, before he landed on Earth, the little prince had actually visited 6 other tiny planets, and each one was home to just one single grown-up, and each one was totally consumed by some kind of pointless obsession. It's basically a little tour of adult foolishness.
You can see the pattern pretty clearly here. There's a king who rules over absolutely nothing, a conceited man who just wants people to applaud him, and a businessman who's busy counting the stars because he thinks he owns them. After each visit, the prince is just left thinking that grown-ups are, well, they're very, very strange.
That businessman's line is just perfect. He keeps saying he's busy with matters of consequence while he's counting the stars. But what does his ownership amount to? He writes the number down on a piece of paper and locks it away. It's completely useless, and that becomes the perfect symbol for the hollow, serious world of grown-ups. So if counting stars isn't a real matter of consequence, then what is? Well, the answer comes to the prince on Earth, and it doesn't come from a person. It comes from a fox. And I'm telling you, this part right here, this is the heart of the whole story. The fox tells the prince that he can't play with him because he isn't tamed. The prince has no idea what that means. So the fox explains that it's this idea that people have forgotten. To tame something simply means to establish ties. It means to make something or someone completely unique to you in the entire world. And taming isn't something you can just rush. It takes time. It takes patience and ritual. You have to come back every day at the same time. You sit a little further away at first, and then each day you get just a little bit closer. It's all about slowly, carefully building a relationship and creating meaning. When it's time for the prince to leave, the fox shares his great secret. And this is it, the line that unlocks everything we've talked about, from the elephant and the snake to the sheep in the box. True understanding doesn't come from what you can see, it comes from what you can feel. But there's a second secret too. The prince had been feeling sad because he'd seen a whole garden full of thousands of roses, and he thought his own rose back home wasn't unique. The fox explains that's not what makes her special. Her importance comes from the connection, from all the time and care the prince wasted on her.
And that leads to the final, powerful lesson. When you establish those ties, when you create love, it comes with a deep and permanent responsibility. The prince is responsible for his rose, just like our narrator, who has now been tamed by the prince, is responsible for him.
So, when you put it all together, the story gives us this beautiful and timeless message about how to live a life that's actually meaningful.
It all circles back to that first conflict, doesn't it? You have the grown-up world, which cares about facts and figures and things you can see, and then you have the little prince's world, which values imagination, relationships, and all the things that are invisible. The real matters of consequence are those invisible bonds of love and friendship. Years later, the narrator looks up at the stars, and he doesn't just see silent balls of gas anymore. He hears his friend's laughter, like millions of little bells. But his peace is fragile, because it all depends on something invisible, something he can never prove. And he's left with this enormous mystery. On that one tiny planet, so far away, is that one special rose safe from the sheep he drew in a box? Now, to a grown-up, that's a ridiculous question. Who cares? But to the narrator, the answer changes the entire universe.
And really, that's the final challenge the book leaves us with. It asks us to look up at the sky and decide for ourselves what's really important. Are we going to see what can only be seen with the eyes, or are we going to see what is truly essential and invisible?